Hello, and welcome to my lecture about the motor control and its different theories. Now, what is motor control? Well, according to Wikipedia, motor control is the regulation of movement in organisms that possess a nervous system, like us human beings and other animals. Now, motor control includes reflexes as well as directed movement, voluntary movement. To control movement, the nervous system, our brain, must integrate multimodal sensory information. They must unite to produce information from different sensory parts of our body and elicit the necessary signals to recruit muscles to create a goal. Now, there are 5 different theories of motor control, and those are reflex theory, hierarchical theory, motor programming theory, dynamic systems theory, and ecological theory. Now, reflex theory. According to this theory, reflexes are basis for all movement. Movement is controlled by stimulus response, and nervous system triggers, coordinates, and activate muscles. And the basic structure of a reflex is receptor, conductor, and effector. An example for this is that when I put my hand in a hot pan, in my mind it thinks, oh, it's hot. So it sends the message through my nervous systems, the nerves, down to my finger or my hand. And when it receives the message, it conveys it through me flinching. And after that, a message passed down a way for me to help with the pain is to blow it or do this kind of action to get rid of the sense of pain from the hot pan. Now, a limitation of this theory, the reflex theory, is that reflex can be a basic unit of behavior, and it doesn't explain fast movements like typing and writing, where it involves our muscles uniting as one to create a fast movement. And it doesn't explain voluntary movements like me reaching out for this pencil sharpener or me reaching out to this tape. And in hierarchical theory, it is believed that the central nervous system or CNS is organized in hierarchical levels, and voluntary movement are initiated by will. Now, the limitation of the hierarchical theory is that it doesn't explain the dominance of a reflex behavior in certain situations, like the one that I made as an example where I put my hand on a hot pan and me letting go of the hot pan due to the pain and heat in my hand. And everyone's developmental patterns are actually different. A clinical implication of the hierarchical theory is that reflex analysis based on hierarchical theory have been performed as part of the clinical assessment for patients with neurological deficits and calculate the patient's level of neural maturity and predict functional capacity. In motor programming theory, it is said that motor response without reflex is possible, and it stores programs for generating movements like me doing this and anything kind of movement. Even what I'm doing now is considered as movements. And spinal motor programs that can produce movement without cortical or sensory input. The limitation of this theory, the motor programming theory, is that it is very broad since there are different systems involved, and it doesn't really consider that the CNS, our central nervous system, relies on musculoskeletal, or bones and muscles, and environmental variables. The clinical implication of this is that it helps patients relearn the correct rules of an action, and retrain movements important to functional tasks. Now, in dynamic systems theory, it is said here that the coordination of movement is the process of mastering the degree of freedom of moving organisms, and movement could emerge by the interaction of elements, as in our environment or something like that, without need for specific commands within the nervous system or our brain. The limitation of this theory is that the nervous system, our brain, spine, and the nerves, has an important role in this theory, and that the presumption that the relationship between the physical system and the environment determines behavior. Now, the clinical implications of this theory, the dynamic system theory, is that movement is an emergent property from the interactions of multiple elements, and it also helps retrain the patient to move with greater ease with the use of momentum by interaction between the speed and physical properties of the body, and also helps us understand the physical and dynamic properties of our body. And in ecological theory, it is said that it is a perception action system where perception focuses on detecting info or information in the environment that will support the actions necessary to achieve the goal. Thus, it is a goal oriented behavior, whereas motor control plus the environment is equals to the goal that we are trying to achieve. The limitations of this theory, ecological theory, is that it emphasizes less on the nervous system due to the way that this theory assumes how our motor control or our body works. In the clinical implications of this theory is that it helps us to be like creative on our own way to achieve the goals that we wanted to do. It makes us explore options, explore our environment, and yeah, it actually really helps us, which results to the goal-oriented behavior that we are actually talking about in this theory.